So in this lesson of initial expedition training, we're going to talk about clothing. We want to make sure that we're wearing the right clothing for the climate that we're having our expedition in, and we want to be able to keep our body the right temperature at all times, so we don't want to get too cold or too hot. We want to stay dry, and we just want our clothing to help us have the most comfortable expedition available to us. So we've got several items of clothing here, and these are all for your top half, and in a moment we'll look at trousers as well. But first we'll look through these, and you'll notice that I've got quite a lot of items here. I wouldn't wear all of these at once, but we'll talk a bit later about a layering principle, and that means wearing lots of thin layers so that you can regulate your temperature better. So starting here with a base layer, and some people might refer to this as a thermal. Okay, and this I would wear on early spring, late autumn, right underneath everything else to keep me a little bit warmer. And a really important feature of quite a few of these items of clothing is the type of material, and this is what is referred to as wicking. So you can see all those little holes in there. The way that this is made is so that it pulls the sweat away from your body so that it is easier for it to evaporate. If you are wet and you get in a breeze, or you stop for your lunch, you start cooling down, then you can get very cold very quickly. So that's base layer, and you can see it's long sleeved to keep you a bit warmer. We then want to put a t-shirt on top of that probably, and again this t-shirt is wicking. This is the kind that you might have been issued with your Greens uniform. This one not specifically because it's an event t-shirt, but this is the kind you might have with your Greens, and again you can see it's that kind of material, and that will dry nice and quickly if you get sweaty or if you get rained on. Of course, on a slightly warmer day you can wear that on its own without the base layer underneath. Then a different kind of material, I've got this up here as an example of one that is not particularly good to wear. A lot of cadets will wear a cotton t-shirt to start with because it might be all they own, might be before they own anything wicking, but you'll find that it stays wet for a lot longer when you've sweated or when you've got rained on, and it will rub more as well. And if you're doing several days of walking, it will rub under your arms, it might rub where your bag is around your waist, and cotton is definitely one to be avoided if you can. If you can get something wicking, then avoid the cotton. I've then just got a slightly warmer layer, slightly thicker layer, which has also got a hood. I think this is actually marketed as a running top, but I find that a nice thin mid layer to put on if I get a little bit chilly with just a t-shirt on. That's quite a nice layer, again wicking style material, and just another thin layer. Getting a little bit warmer now, and this is a sort of microfiber fleece. You might have heard of microfiber with towels, so it's quite quick drying. Again, it doesn't have the wicking properties because it's further away from your skin, so it doesn't matter quite so much, but that's quite a nice type of mid layer. So a nice thin fleece is often good as a thin mid layer. Now moving on, getting even warmer, this is a thick hoodie, and I would probably not be wearing this while I was walking, but it's important to remember, even if we're wearing all of these sorts of clothes while we're walking, don't forget that you're going to be stopping to have breaks, stopping to work out your navigation if you're not quite sure where you are. You might have quite a long break at lunchtime, half an hour, 40 minutes, and you can get very cold. So it's always good to have a warmer layer in your bag. And of course, if you're doing multi-day and you're at the campsite, then you're going to want something nice and warm to wear while you're doing camp craft, putting your tent up and eating your dinner and all that sort of thing. Okay, now we're moving on to this, which is called a soft shell. And this is quite a good outer layer for if it's going to be dry, but it might be a bit cool. So generally they'll have a fleecy sort of interior and then a slightly shiny exterior, which means that they offer a bit of wind resistance. So don't think that it's a waterproof, okay, but it's quite a good outer layer for a bit of extra warmth, and it'll keep the wind off a little bit. And then moving on to an absolutely essential piece of kit, which is waterproofs. You need to have a full set of waterproofs with you on any expedition. Even if the weather forecast is good, you don't want to be caught out if there's an unexpected storm or even just a rain shower. So you need to have a hood. Okay, you don't want your head getting wet. And this is quite a good mid-weight waterproof. It's got a bit of a lining, so it has a bit of warmth to itself, but it's also breathable. When you're looking for a waterproof, you want it to be breathable so that you're not just sweating inside it. It also needs to have taped seams, which you can't see on this one because they're underneath the inner lining, but I'll show you on the next one. But this is a good mid-weight waterproof. If you're warm enough and you don't want to add any warmth with your waterproof, then you could get just your basic thin waterproof jacket that its only function is to keep the rain off. It doesn't add any particularly extra warmth. Of course, you will be a bit warmer with it on because it's another layer, but it's the minimum thin waterproof layer that's going to keep that rain off. Now, as I say, this needs to have taped seams, and what that means is wherever you've got stitches in your jacket, that is a weak point where the rain can get through. And it needs to have this tape over it that is going to stop any water coming through. Now, unfortunately, this one needs retaping. So if you were given a jacket from stores and told to use that on your DOV or your expedition, and it had seams like this that's coming apart, that isn't any good. Okay, that is not 100% waterproof anymore. Okay, so those stitches there are now going to let the water through, and it's all going to seep through and be very uncomfortable and cold and wet. So you need tape seams, and they need to be in good condition. So make sure you're checking your kit before your expedition. Now, this final jacket is one that the sort of jacket that I see cadets may be wearing quite a lot, which there's a few issues with it. The first one is they might think it's waterproof. Now, this is officially a ski jacket, and quite often they might not be waterproof. So if you were to get a jacket like this, make sure it's definitely waterproof, and that will all be on the labels because you can't see whether it's taped seams because it's got so much lining. The other thing is that it does have a lot of lining. It's got lots of thick layers. So on a very cold day, you could wear it, but once you've been walking for a while, even on a cold day, and I say cold, I mean relatively, because we're only talking really about walking in the UK between sort of April and October. So a relatively cold day, you're still going to get very hot in this. And it's got lots of layers and you can't take them apart. You have to be wearing all that layering at once. So if this was all you had as a waterproof jacket, A, you need to make sure it's definitely waterproof, but B, if it's raining but quite a warm day, you don't want to have to keep all of those layers on in order to keep the rain off. So the best sort of thing to have as a waterproof is a fairly thin layer that you can throw over whatever layers you've already got on, just to keep the rain off. So there's a few options of top half layers. and we'll have a look at layering them in a moment. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the layering principle, and this is to make sure that you're always at a comfortable temperature. You want to be able to put a layer on or take a layer off to get you just the right temperature. And at different points of the day, you're going to be at very different temperatures. You'll almost certainly put on too many clothes at the start of the day. If you've just got out of your tent and it's really cold, and you've got to cook your food and take your tent down, you're probably going to put quite a few layers on, and that's fine for while you're doing your campcraft at the start of the day. Then once you start walking, probably within 500 meters or the first kilometer, you're going to start feeling pretty hot, and you're probably going to want to take a layer off. And at different points throughout the day, you'll want to take a layer off or put a layer on. So maybe you've just walked up a big steep hill, you'll be really hot, you might take a layer off. Maybe you stop to have a break, have a half-hour lunch break. You will need to put some layers on to make sure that you don't get chilled while you're stopped, because your body isn't creating that heat anymore. So I've got a bad example here, which is just 2 layers. You're probably going to feel fairly warm in this at the start of the day, because this is a pretty thick coat, and this is the one I mentioned. It's probably not going to be great because it is very thick. So you start walking, you start to get a bit hot, and you take this coat off, and you've just got a t-shirt underneath because the coat was really warm and you thought you only need 1 layer. You're going to keep walking, and maybe you get a bit of wind chill, or even worse, it starts raining a bit. If it's going to start raining, you're going to want to put your top back on, or your jacket even. Okay, and you're going to put that back on. And if you've just got a few thicker layers, you're going to be taking your coat off and putting it back on all day. You're never going to be at the right temperature. You're going to always be a bit too hot and want to take your coat off, or you're going to be a bit too cold and you're going to want to put it back on. And also, you're going to really start annoying your team members, because you're going to be wanting to stop really often putting your coat on. And that's going to add a lot of time to your day. So just having a couple of thick layers is not what we want to be doing. So this is our better example, and there's actually 5 layers in this, but that's probably the sort of layering I'd be wearing on a pretty cool day. Particularly at the start of the day, I might have all these layers on. By maybe midday, maybe I'll just have a couple, and then I put some back on when I stop for food, to make sure I don't get chilled. So I've got my waterproof on top, but don't be afraid to wear it if it's not raining. It's a good wind break as well, so it will stop the wind chill a little bit. Okay, and it's an extra layer of warmth. There's no point putting a fleece on for extra warmth, and then you're waterproof because it's raining, if just the waterproof itself would have been enough. So I'll show you the layers we've got. So we start walking and it's not raining, so probably take my waterproof off. Don't then shove this in the bottom of your bag. You need your waterproof to be nice and accessible. Okay, then I've got a mid layer. So I've got this fleece. That's going to keep me fairly nice and warm. And that's a slightly thicker mid layer. And then I've got a thin mid layer. So by the middle of a coolish day, I might be down to this. And then I've got a t-shirt. Remember, we've got those nice wicking t-shirts, so it's wicking away any sweat. And if, while I'm warming up and starting to take these layers off, if it starts raining, I can of course just put my coat back on. I don't have to put all those layers back on, just put the coat on, so I'll still be relatively cool but dry. And then right at the bottom, I've got my base layer, thermal layer. Okay, so a nice amount of layers. If I start getting a bit cool, I can just put 1 layer back on, and that will warm me up a little bit, and I can put them on and off to really pinpoint the exact nice temperature that I want to be. So that's the layering principle, and that's really important. Make sure you've got a good number of thinner layers. Okay, moving on to bottom halves. So again, I've got lots of different options that I'm going to show you and talk about whether they're any good for expeditions. So first up, we've got jeans and jogging bottoms, and both of these are a big no. Okay, so both of them are really bad if they get wet. So if you get caught in the rain before you manage to put your waterproofs on, or if you step in a puddle and they get wet at the bottom, they hold so much water and they get really heavy. They also both rub. Okay, and you really don't want things to be rubbing and chafing when you're walking for 6-8 hours in a day. So all of these seams and the fact that it's a thick material is going to make it rub. Particularly jeans, they have really thick seams because it's thick material to start with, and it's fairly rough material. So the short answer to jeans and jogging bottoms is just no. Just avoid them completely for expeditions. So coming on to what you might actually wear, we've again got some thermals. So like on the top half, you might wear thermals, and again you can see that these are wicking. So if you're sweating, that's going to wick away the moisture, and these are a base layer. Now personally, it would have to be pretty cold for me to wear these under any trousers, but if you're a particularly cold person, you might want to wear them. But you also might want to have them in your bag as nightwear. So you could wear these underneath your walking trousers to add another layer of warmth in the night. These are some running trousers, so running leggings. They're lycra. They're again a nice lighter sort of wicking material, and a lot of people wear these either as a base layer or as a top layer. These are just leggings, and they're generally quite good because they hold quite tight to your leg. They're generally less likely to rub, but do make sure they haven't got any nasty seams that are going to rub. Then we've got a couple of versions of your classic walking trousers, and these are nice lightweight material. And the great thing about these ones in particular, and quite a lot of good walking trousers, is that they are quick drying. So if they do get wet in the rain because you didn't get your waterproofs on quick enough, or they may well get wet at the bottom from the grass, then they can dry nice and quickly. So these are nice and lightweight, and I would wear them in warmer weather. And then these ones I would probably not wear unless it was really very cold, because these are actually lined and they've got quite a thick fleece lining. And as we spoke about layering, when we looked at top layers, you might not want to have one really thick set of trousers because you can't take them off to have a cooler layer. So I do wear these sometimes, but maybe not if I'm going to be walking a lot and getting really warm. And then finally, our top layer is waterproof trousers. Oh, and there's a great big hole in these, so maybe don't use these. These are just some that I grabbed from stores, so hopefully we won't issue these to you. And remember, they can be used as another warm layer. These particular ones, and I did grab them as a bit of a bad example, not only because of the hole in the bottom, but they are thick and horrible. Okay, they're quite waxy, and these were probably pretty cheap. Ideally, what I would like is one that's quite similar to the material of this jacket here. I don't have any waterproof trousers on me to show you, but this is a much better material. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but it's a lot lighter weight, and this is a lot heavier and almost sort of sticky. It'd definitely be quite sweaty wearing those, but do make sure you've got a full set of waterproofs. So if this is all you could get, then they're okay without the holes in the bottom, but a nicer lighter weight one would be better, because they won't be quite so sweaty and horrid. Okay, so that is trousers. So I keep mentioning how well stuff performs in the wet, and even if you're not out in the rain, or you do manage to get your waterproofs on in time when it does start raining, you're going to be sweating and things are going to get wet. So whether it's from the rain or your sweat, it's going to get wet. So I've got a few of those items up here to look at. We've got proper walking trousers, jogging bottoms, jeans, a wicking t-shirt and a cotton t-shirt. So first we need to wait for a little rain shower. Had to improvise here because it's not raining. Yeah, I'll go right up this end so everything's getting equally wet. And that was quite a downpour. So initially, obviously everything's going to be pretty wet, but even being soaking wet, these are still quite light. They haven't held lots of that moisture, although they're very wet on the top because I've just absolutely soaked them. They haven't held a lot of it within the fabric, so they've stayed fairly light. The joggers, they've put on quite a lot of weight. Okay, I've missed quite a lot on them, so there's a fair bit that's dry, but they're still a lot heavier. Definitely up the top where the pockets are, it's held a lot of water in those pockets. They're very wet and horrid, and they're really going to start rubbing now that they're wet. Jeans, again, they have gained a lot of weight, and again, they're going to be rubbing where they're wet. They're going to stick to you, rub, be horrid. Wicking t-shirt, it's holding a bit of water at the bottom, but hopefully that will dry pretty quickly. And then the cotton t-shirt is the absolute worst, really. That is holding a lot of water. Okay, I can squeeze some out, and that is really very heavy, and that is gonna just feel horrid, weigh you down, be really very cold, and gonna be rubbing wherever you've got a bag strap or anything, or any seams. So that's not great. But the other thing we want to know is how well they're gonna dry, how quickly they're gonna dry. So let's leave them for a while and see how they do. Okay, so this lot's been drying for about an hour. We've had a tiny bit of sun, but mostly pretty grey, standard British summertime. So these are completely dry, I'd say they are. There's no wet bits. Those are dry completely. So if we were wearing those, we'd still be nice and dry, nice and warm. These are still really damp. Okay, and they're really very cold as well. Up at the pockets where there's lots of water still, they're really cold. So they would not be very nice to be wearing, and they haven't got any belt loops or anything, so they'll probably be falling down with the weight of the water in them. Jeans, again, really cold, still quite wet, really wet up in the thicker bits. So they're still going to be rubbing and they'd be horrid. Do not wear them. The wicking top, getting there. It's not quite fully dry. It's a bit damp. It's dampest at the bottom, but I did get a lot of water on it, so it's getting there. Not quite there yet. But compared to the cotton, the wicking's pretty good, because this is, again, very cold and still really heavy. Even though it's had quite a long time to dry, quite a good breeze drying it off, it's still really heavy with all that water in it. So that shows you that it's really important to make sure you've got the right materials, get proper walking kit that's gonna wick away the moisture and keep you nice and comfortable. Okay, so one final mention about making sure that you look after your kit. I've just come back from a run. I was out for probably about 2 hours and it was raining a bit more than this for most of the time. And I showed you this coat when we were looking at waterproofs, and said about checking tape seams. And I don't know if you could see that there is a puddle of water in my sleeve. I would have emptied it sooner, but I want to show you. So it might even trickle out. There. That's a bit disappointing amount, but it feels wetter than that. It was very wet in there. Let's try the other one. Yeah. That's all coming out of my sleeve. So I think I'm going to be putting this in the wash with some Knickwacks, which is a kind of clothing waterproofer, and having a check of all the seams. There we go, that was a bit better. So yeah, make sure you look after your kit so your kit can look after you.